What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to ICNV Drivers Edition. Today, we're going to get into a quick topic that's been dominating a lot of conversations lately, and that is GM's, how do I say it? Let's just get into it. The trans filter must be replaced at 7,500 miles suggestion, or should I say mandate, or however you take it. But let's talk about it. Okay, so as of recently, from my understanding, and I've heard this and been asked this question over and over by several people, especially some of you subscribers, and just people just reaching out on Facebook and tagging me in conversations, is that GM came out with a mandate that states, and I say mandate because that's how everybody's treating it, saying that the car needs to have the trans filter replaced at 7,500 miles. If you do it early, they want you to pay for it out your own pocket at 7,500 miles. And then there's the big threat, or should I say the scare, of if this is not done, your factory warranty will be voided. So I've chimed in on this conversation several times, and I've actually spoken to a couple of people I know at dealerships, and I'm trying to get some feedback from a couple engineers. Because I will say this was a heavy conversation back in 2022 and something that was brought up at Corvettes in Carlisle. Now, I say that to you because, again, I don't know the engineer's name that was at the Chevy booth that was talking. I just don't know his name. But one of the things he mentioned is people can't be lax on the trans filter change as they have been in the past. And GM needs to come up with a stiffer way to enforce this. Now, with me hearing that bit of information from an actual engineer of the Corvette team, the conversation was more centered around people buying Corvettes and not driving them, meaning putting less than 3,000 miles on your car a year. You are not a problem, but ultimately, what's taking place is that because the rule initially stated the first year oil change and trans filter change was on GM, many people were taking their car in to get the trans filter changed with less than 3,000 miles, just so they can make it up under the first year free service. Well, if you get your trans filter changed with 3,000 miles, you really haven't given the car still a proper break-in. I mean, let's be real about it. They say the trans filter should be changed somewhere around 7,500 miles. If you've only driven the car for the initial 500 miles and then got past the 1,200 miles or suggested 1,500 miles before tracking and doing a lot of other high performance activities with the car, and now you're changing the trans filter before 7,500 miles, you really haven't given the car the proper break-in for the trans filter that people were concerned about, or should I say for the transmission. So what did they do? The simple way to address it was to extend it. So they extended it 2 years. Well, guess what? With the 2-year extension, you still were seeing cars come in under 4,000 miles getting the trans filter exchanged. So in the grand scheme of things, GM is not doing this to target drivers of their cars and make it difficult for them. They're not doing this to pick out any certain type of Corvette owner, but what they're trying to do is to emphasize the importance of getting the trans filter changed around 7,500 miles. And that is important because think about it like this. It's another part of the break-in process that many people aren't taking serious. So when they come out and say, hey, your factory warranty will be voided on the transmission if this is not done, and they make more stiffer guidelines, because ultimately, like I said from the conversation that was being held, is that the trans filter being changed at the proper usage somewhere around 7,000, 7,500 miles is something that really needs to be treated with severity. Well, since this rule has come out, I've taken my car in for service, and what's funny about it is now, as I'm talking to my service advisor, trying to build a relationship and maintain a relationship, especially as they service my car, this will be the 3 times now. He sat there and said to me, since that rule has come out, we've seen trans filter changes go up by almost 160%, whether they're near 7,500 miles or not. Think about that. Because before that, I would assume that everybody was doing it. But then another thing that he brought to my attention, and this is coming from a Chevy service advisor, is that, and one of the reasons why I messed with this dealership is because I didn't have to explain or fight with them about changing my trans filter. Now, I will be honest with you. I got Zeus's trans filter changed somewhere around 6,200 miles. That's where I was at when it came up for that time, and my 1-year free trans filter service. Am I concerned about my transmission warranty being voided? No. One, because Zeus is a 2020, and this information recently came out, I think, for 2023s. So that's 3 model years later. It's the same transmission, but 3 model years later. And back then, even GM had a video or something stating that they recommend it get changed at, and that was the key word, recommends it get changed to 7,500 miles, but somewhere over 5,500 to 7,500 is acceptable. So I don't understand why today many people, or GM itself, unless there's something they're not disclosing, that's not acceptable enough.
I think this is the perfect time to take a quick break. Go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, join the ICNV Driver Edition community. This is an interactive community, so if you hit me up on any one of my social media platforms, I will do my best to respond to you, and I may make a video based off the topic you bring up. So become a member, subscribe to the channel. For all my military members, both active and veterans, I'd like to give you guys a big salute, because we know freedom isn't free, and because of you guys, it's the reason we get to enjoy the things we enjoy and do what we do today. So again, salute to all my military family members, active members, and veterans. But let's get back to this video.
I'm gonna go one step deeper. As my service advisor sat there and said too, is one thing that came out of this conversation or this mandate by GM, which it wasn't just for the customers. And I had to think about that for a second. And then I remember, and I'm sure you guys remember too, especially a lot of you Corvette owners who got your Corvette C8 for 2020 and 2021, is that many dealerships actually declined or told customers the first trans filter change was not free or covered by GM. But since GM has made this announcement or this mandate come out, we no longer hear those comments. And I was hearing those comments well into 2022, because people will pop up on forums and say, hey, I thought this was the case, can you confirm? And my answer was, which is still to this day, is why would you want your car serviced somewhere that doesn't know any information about how to maintain and upkeep it, especially stuff that allows them to get paid for free to do it? Well, those days are long and gone now, because every Chevy store that services Corvettes know about this, as I would say, crazy mandate. But here's the part of the conversation I really want to cover with you guys before I let you go. Do I truthfully believe GM is going to void factory warranties? No. If you get your transmission serviced before 5,000 miles, I feel like you're not doing your car any justice. I've seen people come out and say, I got my trans filter replaced at 6,800 miles. And the dealership said I need to pay to get it done out of my own pocket again at 7,500. That right there, and hear my words, that information right there is truthfully a dealership strong arming you to get you to pay for a service. This goes both ways. When GM made this announcement, the goal of GM, from everything that I was understand or I was witness to, was to make people be more accountable with getting their trans filter replaced around 7,500 miles as suggested. Now with this information out there, dealerships are taking advantage of it to force people to pay for additional services. And I really don't feel like these additional services are justified. But yes, if you want to play the card that GM says 7,500 miles, go right ahead. But here's the problem or the situation I'm going to bring to your door. If you buy a used car and you have no idea what the service history is, but you are told it's still up under manufacturer's warranty, and say you get it with 8,000 miles, and you buy a car that a customer serviced the trans filter at, say, 5,700 miles, how do you know? Is this now something that you look into? Maybe me mentioning this will now make some people kind of aware of this, but do you really believe that if you buy this car, you didn't own it, the trans filter situation was addressed at 5,700 miles, you don't know this, but you buy the car with 8,800 miles? And I use 8,800 miles because I see a lot of cars out there today for sale with 8,000, 9,000 miles, and that's outside that suggested range I'm hearing mentioned by many dealerships on how long you have to get the car trans filter replaced after 7,500 miles. So when you take your car in because you're having a transmission issue, do you believe GM is going to void that warranty? My answer is no. And I'll tell you why. GM has honored engine repairs, transmission repairs on cars with less miles where it was proven or documented that the break-in procedures weren't even followed as suggested by GM. But now you think that maintenance was done, that they're just going to say, well, we know you had the maintenance done, but it was too soon. This isn't about screwing over the customer. It's more so about getting the customer to understand what type of vehicle they have and to service it as that. So I want to sit there and say to you that GM will not void the warranty. It's just not good business for them, especially if you got it done somewhere with a reasonable timeline. But I will say this to you. There's nothing wrong with doing it twice. There's nothing wrong with doing it early. There's nothing wrong with doing it several times. But at the same point in time, why would you want to? There are too many stipulations that fall into this type of situation. And from my history with General Motors, this is not how they treat their customers or do business. So when you hear a lot of these threats and dealers telling you, especially when you're around 6,000 miles, I feel like if you don't do the trans filter after 6,000 miles, I'm not going to say you're doing it injustice, but I will sit there and say to you, if you look at the information that GM has put out, and what GM sat there and said was most of the debris should come within the first 7,500 miles as the gears wear into place and so forth and so forth and so forth. So after 7,500 miles, after getting the trans filter replaced, you do not have to be concerned about it again until 45,000 miles. So if you get it done around 6,000 miles and you get a little bit more debris, in essence, based off the information that GM put out, you shouldn't see that much debris inside the trans filter between 7,500 and 45,000 miles. And even then, I really don't think or believe we're going to have people going in at exactly that mileage to now get their trans filter replaced. So with that being said, don't freak out about this new statement. Understand what actually is taking place. This rule came in place because many people were not taking their trans filter replacement serious. This rule came into place because many dealerships was not honoring the replacement of the trans filter being covered by GM. So since this has come out, trans filter replacement has been up on cars 160%, which I can't tell you if more Corvette owners are more educated now or if they still would have not taken care of this, because again, you have several owners that don't put more than 3,000 miles on their car a year. But like GM sat there and said, and I think that's the biggest reason why they extended to 2 years, because the 6,000 mile range is acceptable. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I want to continue to work on this behind the scenes, because I do have every intention of speaking with some engineers when I get the opportunity down at Carlisle, just to get a little bit more in-depth conversation on this, because like I said, the information that was relayed in 2022, I really want to know or see if the thoughts are the same for 2023. So after speaking to one of the engineers, the message I got, or that was relayed to me, is it is not GM's intent to screw over their customers or penalize their customers by voiding their warranty. It's more about making everyone aware of what needs to take place to maintain their vehicles to the best of their ability so they can get the peak performance these vehicles were intended to deliver. I was told only in rare occasions will the warranty actually be voided, and that will be focused around extreme neglect or deviation from the actual maintenance schedule. So what was expressed to me, this is more about getting everyone on the same page to get the required maintenance done for their vehicle so they can always get the intended and the maximum performance out the vehicle that it was intended to deliver. At the end of the day, I would do my best to try to get the trans filter changed as close to 7,500 miles as you possibly can, but I wouldn't think getting it done somewhere in the 6,000 range would be that detrimental. And based off the conversation I had with the engineer, I wouldn't be concerned if I got it done somewhere in that time frame. But that's the information that was shared with me, and I'm sharing it with you. Do with it as you please. ICNV Driver Edition. Go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Join the ICNV Driver Edition community. This is an interactive community, so just like this topic, if you mention a question or ask me a question, I'll answer it, and a lot of times I'll make a video on it that we can share with the whole community. So, as always, chase your dreams, build your visions. Don't let anyone say discourage you, because it is okay to be unique. And as always, stay safe, stay blessed, and I will see you in these streets. Peace.